I'm back, baby!
What's up, guys? Eli here, back for a new stuff video. I have a pretty giant anyway, stack of vinyl here that I've accumulated. I didn't buy it all at once. I've accumulated this over the last few months. As you know, likely anyways, I don't buy a ton of vinyl. It's not my favorite format. That said, I do have a soft spot for it. I typically don't go out of my way to buy it or order it or anything, depending. But if I see something cool out in the wild, I obviously, like you guys, I have to have it. But anyways, like I said, vinyl, not my favorite format. It's definitely cool. I don't necessarily have nostalgia for it. I did not grow up with vinyl like some of you guys did, but again, it's a cool format, and I definitely collect it. I have a pretty huge stack in my collection. But anyways, enough rambling about shit that doesn't matter. Let's get started. Let's get through this together. Originally came out in 1997. We got the third full-length album from Gorgoroth, Under the Sign of Hell. One of my favorites, although I love all the early, Norwegian black metal bands. Gorgoroth are, obviously often considered like a kind of second stringers from that early Norwegian scene. I'm not saying I disagree with that, but I don't agree either. I fucking love Gorgoroth. There's just a band that I always return to. This might be my favorite album from them. It just might be. So anyways, like I said, originally came out in 97. This is the most recent vinyl pressing from 2022 via Soul Cellar Records. Cool gray and black or whatever. Gray and black and white marbled vinyl. I think color vinyl's pretty to look at. I don't give a shit about it. I don't go out of my way to acquire it. When I bought this, I didn't know it was even going to be colored. But it's cool to look at, and it fits the, obviously it fits the cover perfectly. Then from 2012, we have the debut full-length album from black metal band Adora, formed in 2008 in the Seattle, Washington area. I remember their demo coming out like in 2008 or 9 or something like that, somewhere around there. Made some waves in the black metal underground. This came out on Creation Records. There it is. Creation Records is a label out of Seattle, Washington. And if you're wondering what Adora sound like, very much in that vein of like what were you calling it? Cascadian black metal. That was popular around the time that it came out. If you like, it's really good. It's really good. Don't get me wrong. If you like shit like Wolves in the Throne Room and Velnias, Adora, I think, are every bit as good as both of those bands. It's a very, very good album. Very atmospheric. It's awesome. Definitely check it out. Even if you're not a fan of those two bands I just named, check it out anyways. At least check out the song, what's it called? City Light. It's the first track from the album. It's really, really good. Then from 1983, we've got Wild Dog's self-titled album. Very weird cover. You got it's self-titled, but you got like the logo, the band logo in white, and then on the other side in red. But this is an early Shrapnel Records release. This is kick-ass, man. Kick-ass. Let's look at that cover again. Just stare at that for a couple of seconds. That's heavy metal right there, man. I wonder if they like Judas Priest. I don't know. I really don't know. Anyways, fun fact, this guy right here, this is the drummer. His name is Dean Castronova. He is currently in Journey and has been for a long time. He's a killer drummer, and he's a killer singer. He can sing. It's funny, he's a drummer, but he can sing better than most singers. He's got a killer set of pipes. So yeah, this is their debut, like I said, from 1983, I think I said. So this band formed in 1981. They had a pretty good run. They went all the way until 2018. Killer, so good. Traditional heavy metal, awesome. This band is so underrated. If you're a heavy metal maniac and you have not heard Wild Dogs, get on it. Get this album, or at least check it out online. You'll thank me later. So good. Forgot to show the record. Got the Shrapnel logo right there. Get it. It's awesome. Before you take it Then we've got the U.S. Metal compilation from 1981. This came from Shrapnel Records as well. Now this might be the first thing they put out. I can't remember for sure. If it's not the first thing Shrapnel put out, it's the first one of the first few albums. And it's funny. It's a cool listen. It's not amazing. There's a lot of stuff on here that you likely haven't heard of. I wasn't familiar with almost any of it. Let's see here. MK. You've got, I don't know. There's not a lot here. Whiskey Stick. Damascus. There's not a lot of stuff on here that I was aware of previously. The Rods. You got the Rods on here. That's the only thing on here that I've ever heard of. Toys. Lyle Workman. Yeah. But the Rods, this is worth the price of admission for the Rods alone. I'm not sure where Varney from Shrapnel Records, I'm not sure where he found the rest of these artists. Maybe they're just, like, they were friends of his, because like I said, the label was brand fucking new. But the Rods, and if you haven't heard the Rods, by the way, oh my god, some of the best 80s heavy metal from the US and some of the most underrated. Check out the Rods and check out this compilation. It's a fun piece of history. It's not going to blow your mind, but again, worth the price of admission for the Rods track alone. I keep forgetting to show the actual records. Cool green Shrapnel label with the tank. Fucking awesome. Classic. And from 1983, second full-length album from Motley Crue. Shout out the Devil. I'm a big fan of this album. I have been for a long time, since I was a teenager. It's funny because I think Motley Crue are garbage. Their first two albums are awesome. I mostly listen to this one. I prefer this to the debut. Absolutely. But the debute's pretty cool too. And then they got a couple tracks after that that I think are okay. I love how they went like evil on this one. I'm not sure why, and they never went back to it. Somebody quoted a friend of mine. I can't remember who it was, but so I can't take credit because it's an awesome quote. But somebody called this album like a glam Venom. If Venom were to put out a glam album, I think it would have sounded a lot like this. Original pressing. I've had it on CD for decades, so it's cool to have it on vinyl. Always thought it had a really cool inner sleeve too. How badass is that? Yeah, it's a killer album, man. If you hate Motley Crue, but you're just a diehard, traditional heavy metal fan, give this album a shot. I think you'd be fucking surprised. Then we've got the debut album from Rat, 1984. As you can see, this is a promo copy. I'm not a huge hair metal guy, especially these days. As a teenager, I liked some of it. Not a big hair metal guy overall, but man, this album is just killer. I always thought Rat were cool. Always thought they were cool. Because to me, they're more Judas Priest than, say, Poison. In fact, I think if I was gonna say if Judas Priest made a glam album, they did with Turbo, but I think this album's way better than Turbo. I just always thought they were just as traditional heavy metal sounding as they are, sleazy glam. You had musicians that could actually play. Killer guitarists in what are their names? Robin Crosby and Warren DeMartini. I mean, those guys were shredders. Good songwriters. I always thought Stephen Pearcy's vocals were at times very similar to Rob Halford. It's just a cool album, man. If you're a traditional heavy metal fan and you hate glam, give some of the early Rat stuff a shot. I think you'd be surprised. From 1976, we've got the debut album from Brand X. This was a British kind of prog band, maybe prog jazz fusion, maybe. Yeah, I think they're teetering more on fusion than prog, but I think to me they kind of fit in both categories. I'm not an expert on either genre. Awesome, dude. Instrumental, at least on the stuff that I've heard, no vocals. Oh my god, absolutely killer. If you're a fan of Mahavishnu Orchestra, Brand X, so good. And you got on drums here, this album's kind of famous for having Phil Collins on the drums, and this is his most technical work ever. If you want to hear Phil Collins really flexing his muscles, because I wouldn't say he, obviously, you have him in Genesis, and he's a great drummer in Genesis, but Genesis were always a band that they did what they did to suit the song. They were never one of those like prog bands that just showed off. Nobody in Genesis played parts that they didn't need to play, if you know what I mean. Genesis was not a showy prog band. So all those guys were great musicians, but you never really saw them show off. If you want to hear Phil kind of showing off, this is an album for you. God damn, it's good. He hadn't been in Genesis for very long at this point. I think this is the only thing he appears on. He might be on another recording as well. I can't remember for sure. They were only active for a short time, 74 to 82. There's the record, Passport Records this came out on. Got the inner sleeve. There's Phil right there. This is a cool one, because people used to do shit like this back in the 70s. This actually has a handwritten story behind the LP, like where the guy got it, how he acquired it, and stuff like that. It's really cool. This LP was originally purchased at the Music Millennium's Intergalactic Trading Company for about $5.36 here in Portland, Oregon on July 27th, 1976. I won't read the whole thing, but it's cool. That's really cool. Anyways, if you want to hear some killer jazz fusion, I cannot recommend this album enough. It's face melting, blistering technicality. It's so fucking good, man. In my opinion, and I'm a noob to jazz fusion, but it's probably my favorite album of the genre. And we've got the debut full-length album from Alan Parsons Project from 1976. They only just formed in 75. This is my favorite thing they've done. In my opinion, this is their true progressive rock album. Sure, they were progressive after this, on subsequent releases, but to me, this is the most proggy thing they ever did. This is a concept album. Obviously, there's a Edgar Allan Poe connection. It's even on the cover. Tales of Mystery and Imagination, Edgar Allan Poe. So it's very cool. I'm a big Poe fan. You got guest appearances on here. My favorite track is probably, I think it's either the Raven or Telltale Heart that has Arthur Brown on vocals, and he's just screaming his head off, sounding like Bruce Dickinson before Bruce Dickinson, before heavy metal really, or before heavy metal was a huge thing. Obviously, there was heavy metal in 1976, but he's like doing heavy metal vocals before most people were. It's awesome. I always thought Arthur Brown had a cool voice, like Crazy World of Arthur Brown. This album, fantastic. If you're a prog fan and you've slept on the Alan Parsons Project, because they put out a lot of pop stuff later on, at least check this album out, and maybe even the next album. And the next album would be I, Robot from 1977. Back-to-back albums, man. 2 albums in 2 years, and they're both masterpieces. Now, this one's already going in a poppier direction. I would still call this a prog album for the most part. There's plenty of complex arrangements, but Alan's already writing for more pop hooks, but they're good pop hooks, man. I wouldn't call this a pop album, but there's plenty of pop elements here. But it's still very artsy, and still I would still call it progressive. It's another concept album, I, Robot book series by what was his name, Isaac Asimov, I believe. I have one of the books. Never did read it, but I'll get to it someday. And again, if you like that 70s and early 80s, what I call progressive pop, this is so good. Staying in prog territory, a lot of people would call this progressive ambient. So we got Edgar Froese of the mighty Tangerine Dream. This was originally a 1974 album, repressed in 2005, and this is a 2022 repress of that 2005 remaster. Again, you'll know this guy from Tangerine Dream, whether you know it or not. I don't know how much solo stuff he has. I know he's got numerous solo albums. This is a Record Store Day release from 2022. Kind of a cool vinyl Obi strip there. Vinyl looks great on this kind of marbled purple. Very, very cool. Haven't heard it yet. I haven't heard any of Edgar's solo stuff, but I love Tangerine Dream. Got a nice inner sleeve, by the way. Yeah, big Tangerine Dream fan, so it's about goddamn time I get some of his solo work. And from 1978, we have Rush's sixth full-length album, Hemispheres. This is one of my favorite Rush albums of all time. This is their most complex and most progressive album. In my opinion, this wipes the floor with 2112. I've said many times, I think 2112 is a slightly overrated album. I think this album just kills it. Oh my God, it's got stuff like probably one of the things that this band is most known for, La Via Strangiato, which is an amazing, amazing song. Everything on here is great. The Trees, one of the shorter tracks, is awesome. Obviously, you've got the side one, Cygnus X1 Book 2, 18 minutes, broken up into different parts. Oh my God. We all know Rush. I don't need to gush, for too long about them, but it's just cool to finally have this on vinyl. Not that I'd been looking for it or anything, but it's cool to have your favorite albums on vinyl. There's something special about that. Then from 1979, 12th full-length album from Jethro Tull, Stormwatch. Kind of crazy that in 79 they already had 12 albums. This is an original pressing. It's very clean copy. I mean, it's almost got sharp corners still. A lot of people kind of say this is run-of-the-mill Jethro Tull, and I'm not a huge Jethro Tull fan, but I think this album is really, really good, especially the drumming. This is probably my favorite drum performance on a Jethro Tull album. Like I said, original pressing from Chrysalis. This is Jethro Tull, still fairly proggy. It's not their most progressive thing they ever did, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. If you're a huge Tull fan, let me know what it is that people seem to not like about this album, because I think it's great. Maybe not their best work, but for 1979, I think it's still really, really good. And we got the third album from one of my favorite bands, Kansas, Mask, from 1975. Very cool album cover. If you look at it close, it's just a bunch of sea creatures pieced together to make it look like a human being. Really cool. I actually didn't really notice that for the longest time. Not my favorite Kansas album, but it's still great. It's got tracks like, best tracks on here, I think, would be like Icarus, Born on the Wings of Steel. It's like almost like prog metal before prog metal was a thing. The Pinnacle, Mysteries and Mayhem. Amazing. I don't know what about it makes it not one of my favorite Kansas albums, but it's still really damn good. And then the last thing I'll be showing today, got the Birdy soundtrack from one of my favorite artists, Peter Gabriel. I've never seen the movie Birdy. I've never even really heard of it. I've only heard of the soundtrack. This came out in 1985. And what you have on here is, you have some new songs that he wrote for the soundtrack, but you also have snippets from other Peter Gabriel songs. So those aren't really very necessary to hear, but you'll want to get this just for the new stuff. And the new stuff mostly is like Peter's ambient work that he does. He kind of dabbled in ambient sounds, so the ambient tracks are really cool, because I think Peter's got a unique sound when it comes to making ambient music. Maybe I'll check the movie out someday. I don't know, but the soundtrack is cool. If you like Peter Gabriel, I'd say pick it up. Maybe not a mandatory purchase, but pick it up if you ever see it out and about. It's worth picking up for. Yeah, I think I got it fairly cheap, so grab it if you're a Peter Gabriel completist. Anyways, that's all, guys. Let me know if you see anything you like, anything that you don't like. Yeah, let's talk about these albums. Anyways, I appreciate each and every one of you, of course. Louis says hello. He's taking a nap down below. And we'll talk soon. Fucking cheers.